Neurofeedback is a way of retraining the brain to be more electrically efficient. And that can improve mood, that can improve attention, migraines, seizures. It certainly helps with individuals prior past head injuries, past strokes. Neurofeedback is really incredible. We've been able to document so many cases of that. And because the AMA did not make a code for neurofeedback, nobody took it up. There wasn't an ability to bill it. So the rest of the medical world, even though they have good evidence and it's safe and it's effective, this tool has not yet become as mainstream as it does need to become.
Welcome to Take Back Your Health with Dr. Amy Myers. Today's guest is a very, very dear friend and colleague, Dr. David Haase. He holds dual board certifications in family medicine and integrative holistic medicine, as well as a certification in the qualification in Aphoresis, QIA. He also serves as the lead faculty for the Institute for Functional Medicine, where he trains physicians globally on managing Alzheimer's, dementia, and chronic illness. In 2003, Dr. Haase founded the Maxwell Clinic in Brentwood, Tennessee, now a leading facility dedicated to advanced nutrition, diagnostics, and brain optimization. He pioneered the HOPE, H-O-P-E, Habitat Optimizing Plasma Exchange Program, a cutting-edge treatment designed to enhance cognitive function and slow cognitive decline in conditions such as Alzheimer's and dementia. Dr. Haase also authored Curiously Heals the Human, focusing on innovative problem-solving in medicine. He's an active consultant and board member for several biotech and medicine science companies, contributing to research in Alzheimer's, longevity, and cognitive performance. Welcome, Dr. Haase. So happy to have you. Well, welcome back to Take Back Your Health with Dr. Amy Myers. Today's guest is a very, very dear friend and colleague, Dr. David Haase. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me, Amy. Really great to be here with you.
It's always good to see you. We go way, way back, and I do think at some level our souls are connected from maybe another past life, but we have yet to figure that out.
Yeah, there's definitely this amazing connection here. It's always been fascinating to see how our lives have interwound and how we've taught each other along this path of trying to figure out how we do the best for humanity possible.
Well, today we're going to be talking about sort of all things Alzheimer's, dementia, chronic illness, the brain. But before we get there, you are a medical doctor, as am I, and then ultimately went into functional medicine. So can you kind of tell our listeners that aren't familiar with you, your background, how you got into this, and then you can move more specifically in how, you got interested in the brain?
I think what's interesting is I really started out as a farmer. I think that's what I grew up on a farm in South Dakota. And it's amazing how your early life shapes how you see things. I think it's really important for people to want to think about their thinking. And I went to Vanderbilt Medical School. There I saw 3 people die at the hands of subspecialists of diseases that were outside of that physician specialty. And I realized, wow, cognitive bias has a really big part in the harm that happens in healthcare. And it really pushed me even further down kind of the super generalist pathway. So I went to Mayo Clinic for residency and was because I wanted to know all the things, know all the data and the specialties, but wanted to be able to look at people from womb to tomb. And while I was there, I got very frustrated. Did I ever tell you my journal club story?
No.
So I
different than the journal club that we were both a part of in functional medicine.
So I started the evidence-based medicine journal club at the Mayo Clinic when I was a resident, because evidence-based medicine was a brand new idea. And we took 3 articles a month. We got a couple of biostatisticians come to help us read them and sort through it. And we did that for 6 months. And by the end of that time, 18 articles, I had become a total therapeutic nihilist. I basically went, wait a second, there's almost no data for what we're doing here. I just put myself deeply in debt to become a medical doctor. And what we're standing on is really flimsy. And I got very despondent. I was like, what did I do? And so But walking down the hallway of St. Mary's Hospital at Mayo, I had this epiphany. It was, wait a second, I did not go to medical school just to diagnose and treat disease. I went to medical school to know how do we create health. Because I saw people getting better, even though maybe we didn't have the data to show that it was what we were doing, people still got better. Their bodies knew how to heal. And so that coincided with a wonderful junket I got to take to go to a food as medicine conference. Jim Gordon just runs amazing conferences. And that's where I met Jeff Bland. And he was speaking, and the skies opened up, and all of a sudden this whole idea of systems biology applied to medicine made sense. And I started really digging into this thing called functional medicine. And that was 1999. 1998.
And you were a resident at that time.
And it changed everything. Started being really curious about what is this human condition, right? What is it to be ill? What are all the factors that lead us to become unwell? And how do we start to rethink this whole process of healthcare? And I'm so thankful that happened, because I love what I get to do. I love medicine. I love patients. And then we get to work with other clinicians who are really curious about healthcare, curious about patients, and are open to learning new things and biasing towards interventions that are safe. Make sure one of my hallmarks is we need to exhaust all safe interventions before we move on to ones that have greater potential for harm. And that's served very well.
When you finished residency, did you immediately, open your own practice, or did you go to work for somebody else? And were you doing functional medicine, right off the bat, or did you have to, convert a practice that was doing more conventional medicine into something that was functional?
Yeah, I was doing functional medicine at Mayo Clinic. So I started doing this while a resident there, and actually started bringing it in. I was started with bioidentical hormones and lots of nutritional recommendations. And that was great. But what's interesting is that I had lots of medical school debt, so I became a rural doctor in Iowa at a place that would help me pay off my medical loans. And I got to be a physician in a town of 4,000 people where I saw everything. There's one surgeon and 3 other family doctors that were there. And it was such an important lesson for me, Amy, because I got humbled so hard when I was there. Because, whoa, my gosh, when patients go to see a doctor and they present their case, and here's my problem, this is what goes on, and the physician does an evaluation and sends them away with a recommendation. If that patient gets better, well, they may hear back. If that patient doesn't get better, very often that patient goes and sees another physician, and there's no negative feedback to the physician. There's no message that didn't work. And that's what happened at Vanderbilt and Mayo, but that did not happen in Cresco, Iowa. Because even if the patient didn't come back and say, what you did didn't help me at all, you didn't know what you're talking about. Their aunt, I would meet their aunt in the grocery store, or I would meet their cousin at the football game. And I got negative feedback about, that didn't help. And that was the most impressive and most valuable thing, because I was still practicing mostly conventional medicine. I was naming it, blaming it, taming it. I had put people on a whole bunch of medications, and just kind of using functional medicine on the side until I got totally schooled by an Amish healer named Amos. One of my patients, I had him all tuned up. He had diabetes, he had hypertension, he had depression, he had GERD, and I had him on a medication for everything. And he disappeared from my practice, but I didn't notice because I was really busy. He comes back like 6 months later. He's thin, blood pressure's normal, no diabetes, happy, and I'm like, what happened? He said, well, I went to go see Amos. Who the heck's Amos? So I got introduced to Amos, and Amos told him, stop all that terrible food you're eating, eat some real food, drink water, pray, walk, sleep, heal your relationships. And what do you know? His body created health, and
Wow.
he stopped all of his medications. I went, damn it. Here I was again, hundreds of thousands of dollars paid for a medical education. And this Amish healer totally took me to school. So I love it when I have to change my mind.
Now, did you start working with Amos at all? Or,
No.
you just learned from that one example?
Well, not really. There wasn't. I already was board certified in holistic medicine at that time. IFM hadn't created its board certification yet. I knew these things. I wasn't practicing them.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of us know, things that we haven't yet put into practice.
Yeah.
And no, actually, I met Amos and I was so blown away. I was like, And then I really worked on just food. Man, I hated supplements. I thought, supplements are just a scam. I believed my medical school professors that said, hey, this is just expensive urine. And I wasn't getting results. Well, one of the other things Amos did is he put his patient on a bunch of supplements.
Right.
Put my patient on a bunch of supplements.
And so, now aren't you the medical director of a supplement company?
I used to be, for 14 years. I've formulated almost 300 different supplements, and I think that as concentrated foods, they're an amazing tool when used appropriately.
Right.
And they're always supplemental, of course, right? We have to really listen to the name of what they are, but they're tools. And but I have had the honor to get to unlearn so many things that I knew that were wrong, and the life just continues to give me new opportunities to unlearn the things that I have yet to align with reality on.
Well, I think that's what makes a good physician. Someone who's able to listen, somebody who is curious, and someone who is open to new learning, right? And I think that's what many of us in functional medicine, do and do well, instead of having, sort of the old school ego about I'm the physician, do what I say. You and I were part of a journal club together with functional medicine, and it's just always fun to learn from others. And when you hit a plateau with a patient, dig in and figure out what somebody else is doing, maybe try that. So, and then because you were this family doctor, and I know certainly as you went into functional medicine as well, were able to treat, we never see the body as separate parts, but the whole body. And then you've got this focus really on the brain. And I know I've been a patient of yours and come to your clinic and the neurofeedback, and now you've moved into this HOPE, which we'll get into. But really, how did you get interested in the brain and really kind of gear your practice more that way?
Well, that's a good question, because this whole passion of how do we create health actually drove me towards health coaching. I was the chief medical officer of Health Coach Incorporated. We own the trademark on the term health coach in the U.S. and Canada, but way too early, right? Way before anybody. This was still in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
I was actually starting a health coaching group with Mayo Clinic nurses, the nurse call-in line at Mayo. Anyway, it was an idea before its time, which unfortunately happens to me on occasion, being a little too far ahead. But in health coaching, it's important to help support individuals with inspiration, education, and support, to help individuals heal from the inside out. And in functional medicine, we do diagnostics and we listen to help find the underlying causes of illness. So here I stack kind of allopathic medicine. Okay, let's diagnose and treat disease. Let's put functional medicine in to figure out what are the other underlying causes, and then let's support that with health coaching to support an individual in their ability to change. But there's still people that had adequate resources, good connections with people, and they were still not moving forward. They were unable to get traction. And the common denominator of all of those was brain function. Either they had a attention issue, a mood issue, maybe had a prior head injury, which I think like 80% of people in the world have a meaningful head injury. I think it's dramatically underappreciated. And they had some inflammatory process that worked with their brain. Anyway, their brain was keeping them from following through on the actions that they wanted to follow through on. And so I became very curious, and I became amazed at the fact that, psychiatry was like the only specialty that didn't examine the organ it treated. So I wanted to have some objective measurements for this organ that controls the human experience. So I got into quantitative EEG and doing a lot of neurocognitive testing, biologic testing. I used to do a ton of neurotransmitter testing until I realized that was all BS. And so another thing I unlearned that a long time ago, though. And
neurofeedback, I know that was part of your practice as well.
Yeah. And so then trying to figure out, I think the mark of a great therapy is that the more you use it, the less you need it. And if you can, neurofeedback is a way of retraining the brain to be more electrically efficient. And that can improve mood, that can improve attention, migraines, seizures, certainly helps with individuals' past head injuries, past strokes. Neurofeedback is really incredible. We've been able to document so many cases of that. And because the AMA did not make a code for neurofeedback, nobody took it up. There wasn't an ability to bill it. So the rest of the medical world, even though they have good evidence and it's safe and it's effective, this tool has not yet become as mainstream as it does need to become. I think it's one of the great shames of healthcare.
A couple of things came up in that. So I definitely want to ask about the head injuries, but just for people who aren't familiar with neurofeedback, do you mind, describing that? I've personally done neurofeedback. I did some with you and then with another. I found it, very effective for, I was having symptoms of just hypervigilance of, always being sort of in fight or flight. So can you tell us what is neurofeedback and what is it helpful for?
Neurofeedback is learning. So every day we get feedback from our environment and we adjust our behaviors according to the feedback we get from our environment. And so like, for instance, if you want to learn to play the piano, you put your hands on the keyboard and you plunk away. And if it sounds good, then you get this positive, your brain hears a sound that sounds nice. You get this positive reinforcement and neurons that fire together start to wire together. And your brain becomes better able to play that piano. And interesting, we can get feedback from anything that we can see or that we can hear. That's all going to give us the information we need to rewire our brains so that it is a more effective brain to take into tomorrow. Well, individuals with many different reasons will have inefficient brain electrical patterns. So what we can do with neurofeedback is we can give you the ability to see your brain electricity. And the way that happens is we put electrodes on the head that measure the electricity coming off the scalp. It goes through a computer, and the computer watches your brain electricity. When your brain electricity moves towards what is healthy, what is functional, you get a reward. And the reward might be you're looking at a screen and the movie plays, and the movie plays bright and loud. And when your computer is watching your brainwaves and your brainwaves move away from what we want to reinforce, maybe in that path of dysfunction, then the movie gets dark and quiet. And the brain wants to watch the movie. So it figures out the three-dimensional electric combination lock to fire the neurons so that you can watch the movie. And the more you are watching the movie, the more your brain is firing in a way that's effective. And because neurons that fire together wire together, you create a more efficient brain for the function that you want to attain. Mm-hmm. It's really exciting. I love showing people brain maps. I love showing people the electrical uniquenesses of their brain, because for the first time, many people look at their brain and they realize, oh, that's my brain. It's not my soul. You know, that your soul is beautiful and perfect, and your brain has some problems. That's a very different thing. And then a lot of shame and guilt and those kind of things can fall away. And when you let go of some shame and guilt, oftentimes people can start engaging in lifestyle. They can start doing changes, and they start to move forward in all other kinds of aspects of their life. You know, you mentioned a neurofeedback for hypervigilance for yourself. See, Amy, you're incredible. You have such an ability to hold so much data in your head, and you notice everything. You're an amazing clinician, and you see many subtle things that other people miss. You have an amazing talent for that. But it's like the old interview question, tell me your greatest weakness. Well, it's really
the people that work for me would be like, yes, she notices everything. She has a high attention to detail. Yes.
And so anything at its extreme or anything out of control becomes a deficit, becomes a problem. Too much attention becomes a problem. People talk about attention deficit disorder. Well, too much attention is a problem. We see that. So anyway, it's an electrically efficient brain. I always think of it kind of like a athlete in the ready position, right? Their legs are bent, they're bouncing, they're ready for whatever's going to come next, because the brain can shift and jive and move. And that's what we're looking for, this maximum adaptable, resilient brain. And so we use neurofeedback in a lot of individuals whose brains aren't functioning well enough to make the behavior changes, to implement the functional medicine changes so that they can actually move forward.
And you mentioned previously that you think, about 80% of people actually have some sort of brain injury. And so I think we're all, when you say brain injury, that doesn't necessarily mean concussion. You just mean they've had some trauma to their brain?
I usually mean concussion.
Concussion, okay.
Yeah, it's so common.
Right, okay. So I think most people think of, we know the football players, if you've, fallen off a bike or fallen while skiing or been in a car accident, these types of things. But to say 80% of people, have they really had that significant of a trauma? Or are you suggesting that, a lesser trauma could actually, damage our brain, that we would maybe not even be aware that has happened to us? And what
I think you said the most important thing is be aware.
Yeah.
Because for instance, the eye can't see itself, right? The eyeball doesn't see itself. And the brain, unless we're really thinking about it, doesn't really perceive itself. It is our organ of perception. We actually just think, oh, this is the way the world is, because that's the way our brain is putting out information. And so we get trapped in whatever our present brain function is. And the number of individuals, I'll take frontal head injuries as an example. I've got this amazing former NASCAR driver that I get to work with. And the guy's been in a bunch of accidents. I mean, these are on video. Man, we've got this documented through the yazoo. And he still didn't believe that he had a brain injury. Where at the same time, he's now had atrophy. When the brain gets injured, the blood vessels gets damaged. And the blood vessels, it may not be that you're comatose and unable to function, but instead you've stretched the neurons, you've twisted the blood vessels in that area. You no longer have the amount of vascular supply to the neurons. Therefore, you get atrophy. The brain shrinks in those areas. We're so fortunate that our brains have so much redundancy. Everywhere in our brain, we have a wiring pattern, and we have multiple different areas in the brain that are responsible for many of the same functions. So one area of the brain getting injured may not come out as a deficit, but you have decreased your brain's ability to be maximally resilient and maximally efficient. So we actually do distance neurofeedback now. So we can actually send a unit out to people and coach them through getting a brain map, and then coach them in neurofeedback in their home. And that's given me incredible joy, because if the brain gets more efficient, everything else can start to improve. That person they have more free will. I think, it's interesting, if you have a poorly functioning brain, I think you have less free will. You're kind of caught in the prison of your current beliefs, actions, behaviors. A better functioning brain allows you to exercise more choice and to be more engaged in your world in a way that you choose.
How, so there's obviously going to be the people out there that know that they've had a significant head injury, and then maybe there are people who know that something happened, but they weren't really thinking of it at the time. So how are you diagnosing somebody? I mean, there's obviously in spectrum where you see the atrophy and that can be picked up on an MRI or a CT, but these people that maybe just, are curious, is something going on? Or, as we move into, dementia and Alzheimer's, I imagine these are precursors and also underlying causes. So just how upstream can you pick up this stuff? Is it through neurofeedback? Is it through MRIs? Is it through questionnaires? Is it through all of this stuff? How are you picking this up before it's gotten to the point that somebody actually has atrophy?
What you said was really well stated. There's many ways, and it's challenging to diagnose head injury. Well, let me go through these. So first of all, symptoms. So we always do a symptom scoring. What are the symptoms that are present? That helps us understand which brain networks may be inefficient. And it may not be inefficient because of a head injury, but it could be because of underlying genetics. It could be because there's inflammatory conditions that are causing those processes to be more challenged. But checking on symptoms, we have questionnaires. Then we have tests of skill so that you actually will, we put you through it takes about 45 minutes, and it's really kind of frustrating, a series of very intense brain tests so that you challenge your attention, your memory, your motor speed. That helps give us understanding as well. And then there's also the aspect of structure. You mentioned like MRIs. Those are really late findings. And so certainly when you see atrophy, that means your head injury is very remote,
right.
and possibly more severe.
Right.
But it's occurred over the course of time. And then the other part is the inflammatory. So we actually have some blood tests now that are looking at inflammatory components like glial fibrillary acid protein and neurofilament light chain. And there's also some new pre-Alzheimer's markers we're tracking, like phosphorylated tau 217, really important markers. And I think those are going to correlate a lot with blood-brain barrier disruption, and which will correlate with head injury. But the most important thing is doing a brain map, getting an EEG, which is a measure of the electricity of the brain. This is where I put a shower cap-like thing on the head that has small electrodes. No electricity goes into the brain. It's just measuring the electricity that's on the scalp. And then that goes through FDA-registered databases of average normal brain electrical activity. And we actually have something called a discriminant analysis, which gives us a probability of how likely is this particular electrical pattern associated with individuals who have had a head injury in the past. It doesn't diagnose a head injury, but instead it says, yeah, this brain electricity looks like somebody that would have had a head injury. So you put together the history plus all of that information, and then you make a probable diagnosis. Now, sometimes it's like, oh, it's absolute. I mean, there's nothing subtle about some of these individuals. But improving brain electrical activity and the efficiency has so many long-term benefits that whether or not the cause is an actual concussion or a head injury, the solution needs to be to ask, how can we improve our electrical activity? And much of the incredible gut work that you talk about and you teach about and you support is incredibly important for optimizing brain health. Very important, foundational, biological component to brain function. So yeah, I would say, and those are also things that we actually can do quantitative EEGs in individuals who are not local.
You have something that you've been doing in your clinic, Maxwell Clinic, called HOPE, or Habitat Optimizing Plasma Exchange. And that's something that you also have a book coming out in January about. But can you tell us what that is and how that then relates to everything that we've been talking about does this help, ward off Alzheimer's and dementia? Does it actually help reverse it? Tell us about it.
Oh, man, this has gotten to be my favorite topic. I mean, I think this is, when you put together everything, it came back to this whole idea that anything that's alive really is dependent upon the habitat that surrounds it for its ability to have high quality of life. So you think about a person, in a war zone, in a poverty-stricken zone, it's going to be very difficult for the life of that person to thrive. But the same thing goes for your cells. Your cells are very dependent upon the habitat of the cell. And the habitat of your cell is something we call the extracellular fluid. Our cells are constantly getting bathed in this liquid that is slowly ebbing and flowing through our tissues, bringing nutrients, carrying away waste. And that fluid, when it is inside of a blood vessel, is called plasma. So plasma is the liquid part of the blood. And that's what, whenever you eat something that's good for you or bring in something that's not good for you, that accumulates in your plasma and it gets siphoned off and taken all around the body. That is your cellular habitat. And we've known for a long time in functional medicine that we're habitat doctors. We're constantly thinking about what toxins are there, infections, allergens, inflammagens, what nutrients are deficient, hormones are deficient. That's all habitat. So the big aha came for me with understanding this procedure called aphoresis, which is when we take blood out of the body, do something with it and put it back in, essentially doing an oil change on the body. And for Alzheimer's disease, it's very clear, a very large randomized placebo-controlled trial was done showing that this process of oil change for the blood decreases the rate at which Alzheimer's proceeds forward by over 60%. It is the single most powerful single therapy, especially for moderate Alzheimer's disease, that exists in the published literature. It's 2 to 3 times as powerful as the medications that have now been approved and in slowing the progress of the progression of Alzheimer's disease. And in individuals with mild Alzheimer's disease, there's a very strong trend towards actual improvement. When individuals get their blood cleaned, they not only slow the decline, but actually can reverse that and come back to normal. Now, the studies were done outside of what we think about in functional medicine. So those people weren't being supported with great nutrition. They weren't being supported by what toxins they weren't being supported by, are you living in a moldy building? Those things need to be addressed as well. And we think those tremendously augment this therapy of plasma exchange. So we recognize that we actually have to, what is the mechanism of action? Why do people get better?
That's literally what I was just about to ask you.
Yeah, the mechanism of action is that we are optimizing the habitat of the cells, of the neurons in the brain. I've actually been the clinical consultant for Sam Altman's longevity company, and I've run the largest study ever completed in plasma exchange looking at longevity. And we've looked at large-scale, single-cell transcriptomics, basically knowing what does plasma exchange actually do, and when we modify it, what happens. And we can say with absolute certainty that we're changing the age of the immune system. And by changing the age of the immune system with this habitat optimizing plasma exchange, it changes how all the stem cells in the body function. And in a mouse model, We see regeneration of multiple tissues, reversal of fatty liver, reversal of osteoporosis, new hair starts growing in these mice, they regain their sense of smell, their memory improves, their T cells and B cells improve. Habitat optimizing plasma exchange has the very strong database for having multiple tissue regeneration support. So it's such a big topic,
right.
and it kind of gets overwhelming for people when we talk about it, but it's really simple. It's, cleaning out the blood, because
right.
that's what's bathing your cells.
So it sounds like, and have you seen this to be true in your clinic, that you have somebody coming in for Alzheimer's or dementia, but they also maybe have autoimmunity or, other health issues, and that those clear up or improve as well when you're doing this?
Yes. Yeah. Matter of fact, so plasma exchange is the standard of care for very severe autoimmune disease. Individuals who have rapidly progressing autoimmune disease, myasthenia gravis, neuromyelitis optica, a whole bunch of these very aggressive diseases. We have completely cured scleroderma in one of our patients, an orthopedic surgeon who came to us with ulcers on all of his fingertips. Well, we did our habitat optimizing plasma exchange along with a functional medicine approach to find and address underlying causes. And we're very proud that, after those treatments, his symptoms resolved, his ulcers resolved, his pulmonary function went from 40% of baseline back to 100% of baseline.
Wow.
And he has remained that way without additional treatment now for over a year and a half.
And
so
how many sessions can you explain to us in general? I know it's probably individualized of how many sessions you need, how frequently are these sessions? Can you walk us through a session, how long one takes?
Sure. It's highly individualized because, it's just highly individualized. I got to say that first of all. So anything I'd say right now, recognize the exception is going to rule. But like, for instance, individuals with Alzheimer's disease, ideally, we would like to do one plasma exchange a week for 6 weeks, maybe even 12 weeks, and then once every 2 weeks, once every month, once every 2 months. And so we're trying to stretch out the frequency. One of the things about our platform is we're tracking all outcomes. We're actually trying to find what is not just the right timing and dosing, but we're modifying the replacement fluids according to each individual's needs. And we're tracking these outcomes because the therapy is really powerful, but we certainly want to make sure people are getting enough therapy, but not any more than they need. Very safe procedure. Let me tell you a little bit about the procedure. Individuals that, let me say a couple of other indications. Long COVID. This has been amazing at breaking the cycle of dysfunction in individuals with long-term long COVID. We have tests in our office looking at the microvasculature to see, is there microclotting going on in the capillaries? We find that individuals with a substantial immune overactivation and microvascular activation respond very well to hope for long COVID. And then I've already mentioned autoimmune disease, many types of autoimmune disease, and then aging. So many people seek us out just for the anti-aging benefits of plasma exchange, because we've been able to document a reversal of biologic aging in a very meaningful way. I'm very proud. One of my 80-year-old patient is winning Brian Johnson's longevity Olympics. He has actually had more age reversal than any other person in that interesting little competition going on. So it's fun. So how does a plasma exchange work?
And real quick, may I ask, have you used it at all in cancer? And is there an application in cancer? Or
well, it's interesting.
The stakes are too high to try that.
No, some people are promoting plasma exchange for cancer. And I actually think there's a group out there that are making too extravagant claims for that. And because you can remove the markers of cancer from the bloodstream, and you can do some tests before and after, but I think it's questionable whether or not that's actually addressing the tumor itself. However, one of the things we know with plasma exchange is that it very substantially upregulates BCL2 when done repeatedly. BCL2 is one of the genes that controls CLL. So we actually have a couple of CLL patients, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, that we've been having improvement in their count numbers as we've been treating as we've been giving them the HOPE procedure for early Alzheimer's disease. So there's biologic plausibility for some cancer types. And I do think that Lyme is also another issue, especially individuals with huge Herxheimer reactions. Individuals have a hard time getting treated because they're just too sensitive. Doing plasma exchange a few times decreases the burden of the inflammasome, all the markers that are turning on inflammation in the system. But I wouldn't call that the definitive treatment. Same way with individuals. We have one patient who has profound silver toxicity because they self-applied a huge amount of silver.
Cream
No, there was
gel,
the colloidal
silver gel. Yeah,
and then also his mother put a lot on, and
that had to have been a lot.
Their plasma was the brightest neon yellow that I've ever seen.
Oh my God!
And so
what were they trying to heal?
It caused I don't want to say too much.
HEPA standpoint.
For confidentiality, but what was so interesting is that silver has a huge perturbation effect on copper. And so plasma exchange actually can help reduce copper levels because it also removes out the ceruloplasmin. So it's such an amazing therapy because we're getting to do a detox like nothing else that exists. You are cleaning the body in a way that there's no other way to move as much stuff out of the bloodstream as this aphoresis procedure. And you asked, how does the procedure work? Well, an individual will sit in a chair. There'll be an IV put in each arm. So we don't use the big central lines, which is where all of the real bad side effects come from. We have we have great success with peripheral lines. We use ultrasound to get the IV lines. Our staff is incredible. And blood comes out one side. It goes into a machine that separates out the liquid part of the blood from the cells, the white, red cells and platelets. The plasma, the liquid part, is discarded. And then the cells are reconstituted with a plasma replacement fluid, which is 5% albumin. It's a very clean, pharmaceutically cleaned albumin. There's nothing attached to it. There's no risk of infections. It's a very clean fluid.
I mean, are you getting this technically from a blood bank or something, the plasma, or where are you getting the plasma?
This would be a pharmaceutical albumin, just like when you were in the hospital and somebody had somebody needed albumin, this is that albumin.
Got it. Okay.
Very, very well controlled. We don't have to worry about infections. We've characterized this very well. And then we also have augmentation fluid that is specific for each person. What do they need to have added in that would be extra for their particular needs and constitutions? And then all that fluid gets mixed up and it goes in the IV in the other arm. And so you sit in a chair for about 2 hours and essentially get an oil change. At the end of that time, a person about your size we'd collect probably about 3.5 liters of plasma. And, that would be, it's quite a remarkable shift. We've also done a lot of studies looking at the behavior of the immune system because we think of our immune system, I don't know about you, but I think of it as getting stuck oftentimes. It starts doing a certain thing, but the immune system has to be continually messaged in order to stay stuck. So usually, your body's going to adapt to upregulate your CD56 cells. And there's a certain set of cytokines that make that possible. and your cells have to keep secreting those cytokines to keep you in that state. When you get plasma exchange, it's kind of like hitting the reset button, right? Like every tech support call you make, what should you do? Reboot. And so I think this is an interesting way to quiet the signaling system, to quiet the messages that are going through the body. And essentially you're getting a reboot, allowing the system to come up. And it's been very fascinating to see how much T cell behavior has changed after plasma exchange. We think of plasma, we're just removing the plasma, like we're removing antibodies and we're removing the complement and the molecular part of the immune system. But what's amazing is how much change there is in the cells of the immune system.
Have you had anybody, because you are working with people with autoimmunity and things like that, have you had anybody have any type of reaction when they're, having this albumin come back in or?
No, it's incredibly benign. So the side effects could be a drop in blood pressure. We honestly haven't seen that for the last several hundred patients. The excess histamine response. So sometimes we have to make certain that people aren't on certain blood pressure medications because your bradykinin levels can go up on ACE inhibitors. So we make sure people are off ACE inhibitors for the procedure. But when we do that, very few people have excess histamine response. And because we're using these peripheral veins, the likelihood of having a blood clot or an infection are incredibly low. And we've also, low calcium is a side effect, but through our augmentation fluid and our other strategies, we have not had a case in the last several hundred patients. So we've been doing everything possible to over-determine safety in this process. We believe we have the largest private aphoresis facility in the United States. We're conducting research trials. We're treating patients from, the United States and abroad. It's a very exciting time. I think this is going to be a major part of medicine moving forward.
And do you have just one machine, or how many people is your clinic able to?
Oh no, we can. We have great capacity. We have 3 machines right now. They are the top of the line, cutting edge. We also do leukapheresis when we're working with individuals who need to have certain stem cell therapies completed. So we have the ability to remove white blood cells, and that's very useful. It's cellular medicine is an amazing field. And when you pair cellular medicine with systems medicine, you get an incredible opportunity to create health at levels that, we really didn't dream possible before.
Mm-hmm. And do you have other physicians at the Maxwell Clinic that are, do they have a different, I know for you there's a, annual fee to be a patient of yours. Do they operate on a different basis? And are there people who are just doing this, the HOPE protocol that someone can just come for that?
Absolutely. Yeah. We offer for just neurofeedback or just HOPE or just, we have a ketamine clinic as well. That's really a remarkable therapy for helping people get unstuck. We move people to get IVs here. But we have about 9 different clinicians at the practice, and Maxwell Care is our major program, which bring in people and just do really good longitudinal functional medicine. And then that supports individuals as they go through the plasma exchange process. And you're right, my practice is unique, and we're diving very deep into a huge amount of data and trying to build systems for what is needed next in healthcare. It's such an exciting time to get to be a physician and to get to be working with patients who are deeply desirous of getting better and willing to do the work to get there.
And for those people who just, for whatever reason isn't possible to come to you guys because you're located in Tennessee, and if they're having to do this weekly, may not be sustainable for certain people. Are there, is there a clearinghouse, so to speak? Like we often send people to the Institute for Functional Medicine to find a functional medicine person in their area. Is there a website people can go to see physicians who are doing this? And then my second part to that question is, you and I know everybody's, different and practices differently. And so are there sort of certain questions that you would recommend that people ask to make sure that they're going to a facility that, maybe is like-minded of you and is doing this process in a similar way that you are?
Absolutely. So come to maxwellclinic.com. We certainly do everything possible to help facilitate people getting care. Even when we do consults, there are not many places in the United States that make this available. I will say that it's very important that if you're going to have this done, to see if there's somebody that's qualified in aphoresis. That's actually a certification through the American College of Pathology. That somebody is being governed and overseen in that way. That there's a clinician on site at all times to ask about the their rate of infection, low blood pressure, allergic reactions, and just what their volume is. Where do they rank in terms of facilities in the United States with regard? Because what we know with most all of healthcare is that volume matters. Going to a place that does a lot of one thing. I've sent a whole lot of people to the Norman Parathyroid Clinic. I mean, this is a clinic that only does parathyroid work, and it's been amazing how much the better their outcomes have been, and their plan is from volume. So we help to guide that, and we'll be doing a lot of physician training in the future and also physician certification so that individuals that are interested in going down this path can learn from all of the challenges that we've had to have over the last 7 years of moving forward in this space.
You have a certification through the QIA. Is that what you were saying before, or you mentioned something about pathology? QIA.
It's called the QIA, and it's really it's governed by the American Society for Clinical Pathology. Okay. And it's through the American Society for Aphoresis Medicine, which I'm a member of. So aphoresis is an amazing field. There's so many uses for different ways of working with the blood. And it's not a field that gets much attention. It's really, there's no one specialty that really owns that field. It's not like, that's something cardiologists do or nephrologists do.
Yeah.
You have to take initiative, and the training, you need to oversee at least 100 procedures before you become qualified for that, before you qualified for that qualification. Take a very challenging test. I have to say it was maybe one of the most challenging tests I've ever taken in my medical career, and very glad I passed.
Yeah, well, that's definitely saying something. I assume, because I remember when I had Graves', an indication for this is actually Graves' disease. At the time, this was 20 years ago now, that was an extreme situation to be doing that. Obviously, now if I had that diagnosis, I would probably, hopped on the first plane to come see you. But I'm assuming that there's certain indications that this is covered by insurance. And then the vast majority that you are likely doing it for, or many people that our listeners might contact, are not doing this for those approved, or maybe they just in their own clinic don't take insurance. So, kind of roughly, what is the cost of this, for a session?
Right. Absolutely. And so it's important to go back. The coverage through health insurance is very spotty, even in the conditions that would be indicated. It's really interesting, with the AMBAR trial, which did all the studies with Alzheimer's disease. Here we have this incredibly powerful procedure for reversing cognitive decline. And we wanted to work with the Alzheimer's Association and do some education about this and help get the word out about this data. And the Alzheimer's Association does not promote anything that's not FDA approved. And I said, well, wait a second, you can't FDA approve a procedure. We use an FDA approved machine, FDA approved devices. We use FDA approved materials, yes, but you can't FDA approve a procedure. And I went, wow, this is a real big dysfunction of that association. And so why that's important is because getting payment for this procedure is going to require a lot more data. And we're actually going to have to fight with individual insurers and the government around the indications that are here. We don't really get the help of the Alzheimer's Association.
Well, they're making money somehow, right? The Alzheimer's Association, and it probably doesn't behoove them to solve the problem of Alzheimer's. I mean, I don't mean to be the pessimist, but I don't know who they're getting money from, but they're probably getting money from some drug companies. And to actually have a solution to the problem means that their association might need to dissolve.
They're getting a lot of money from the pharmaceutical industries. That is who they are supported by. And unfortunately, it's created a bias to where even the advocacy for this therapy that is so effective and cost effective, when you compare this with the medications that are currently approved for Alzheimer's disease, this is very cost comparative there.
For going into a long-term facility or not remembering your family at a very young age. I mean, I don't think you can put a price on that.
But, you can put a price on the long-term care.
Oh, of course.
For instance, we're very proud. We have actually discharged a 91-year-old man from memory care back to assisted living with this procedure. Wow. And we think that's pretty incredible. And we'd love to know, we'd love to know why we were so successful in that particular case, because we did all the things, but it's interesting, that's over, sometimes $12,000 a month. So it's as we start taking a look at the question between coverage and these procedures, it's going to be an uphill battle. And that's one of the reasons why we are coalescing the data of what we're doing. We want every patient that participates with us to be part of the solution, because if we can aggregate this data and show the effectiveness, we have a lot more ability to continue to move the needle forward to change the practice of medicine overall.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind sharing, what a session costs?
Oh, yeah. So it depends on where you go. There are places in the United States that's about $12,000 per procedure. Oh. We're very proud to be, we believe we're the lowest cost available. We want to keep bringing the price down. It's currently about, I think it's $5,300 procedure. Mm-hmm. And then and everything depends upon, the frequency, the timing. We always try to do as few as necessary, but if you think about doing this particular oil change, we have to do while the engine's running, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to do it repeatedly in some cases, and other individuals, we only do a couple. So it really depends upon the indications for that person.
Right.
I hate to be so loosey-goosey about it because...
Oh, no, I just wanted to give people a general sense, right? I didn't want your phone to start ringing and people thinking this is a $200 procedure and, your staff is, fielding all these phone calls of people that just... Yeah.
Well, we really believe this should become standard of care. And but we live in these economic realities right now. So.
Yes. Well, appreciate you taking the charge on that. Well, before we part ways, I always like to ask my guests 3 ways that they would encourage our listeners to take back their health.
Take a deep breath right now and recognize you are infinitely valuable. You are profoundly valuable. Nobody else, no collection of molecules in the whole universe gets to have the experience you get to have right now. It's really an honor to get to be alive. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think it's a burden. This is a remarkable experience we get to be on. And sometimes it takes us taking a moment and going like, wow, this is really incredible. I mean, it's amazing that here you are, this collection of atoms, and you're actually aware of your existence. It is profound. So I'd say that's the first thing. The second thing is to honor your breath. Everybody that's listening right now, just take a deep breath in and then put out a big sigh of relief. Isn't that amazing? Instantly, you can change your state. You can change who you are. You have way more influence over your experience of life than what you may currently believe. And if you don't think you have enough influence, then seek out somebody to help you to claim your sovereignty, to reclaim your health, to take back your health. How about that? And three, I would say, find somebody to encourage today. Find somebody to encourage. We all get stuck in our own head. And when you encourage somebody, those words come right back at you and help you see and feel your miraculousness, your wonder. You're very important in this world. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have a purpose. And I think for you to really embrace and move through this space and time is this adventure that you're on. So just want to encourage people, love on themselves and love on others. It's when we do that, then a whole lot of these other things start to take care of themselves.
Yes, well, you're very good at that one. Well, awesome. How can we've mentioned it, I believe, the Maxwell Clinic, but can you tell listeners where they can find you, your clinic, wherever you'd like to direct them?
Absolutely. So Maxwell Clinic is in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a fun place to come visit. Absolutely. And we love visitors. You can find us on the web at www.maxwellclinic.com, or you can call us at 615-370-0091.
You are the first person to give out a phone number on my podcast. That's awesome.
Really? What?
Yep.
You're kidding me.
No, it's awesome.
Oh, that's amazing. So yeah, that makes me really happy because we have just an amazing group of humans that we've given them the mission to love on the people that call and, listen. We don't know what people's needs are. And if we can be of help, we want to be of help. So.
And any social media, anything for you personally or the clinic?
Yeah, no, Maxwell Clinic. I would take a look at Maxwell Clinic. Most everything interesting is coming through there. Please follow us on social media. You can also follow David Haase, MD. That's David.
And it's Haase.
That's right.
You don't have an ass in your name.
I might be an ass, but there's not one in my name, right?
Yes, that's what you usually say. There you go.
So David Haase, MD on Facebook, Instagram, X, all of them. So, it's a great ride we get to be on together. Amy, thank you so much for having me. You have such a great group of listeners and you have such a great tribe. You help create so much healing in the world. It's awesome.
Well, thanks. Well, I'm so happy to have you and good to catch up with you. And we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
I want to thank this week's guests for sharing their time and knowledge, and thank you for listening. To read the full show notes for each episode, which include a summary, timestamp, quotes, and any resources mentioned, please visit amymyersmd.com/podcast. Lastly, if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love if you would leave a rating and a review on Apple or Spotify, and we'll select a few to read out loud in a future episode. Tune in next week to hear from another inspiring guest as we help you take back your health.